Hey guys, tonight we slip behind the lacquered gates of the Forbidden City, where thousands of palace maids once served emperors, who barely knew their names. You are one of them now. You walk slowly, carefully, your feet never making a sound. Across the cold stone floor, the scent of sandalwood clings to the hallways, and the air is just dry enough to make you blink a little too often. The walls rise on either side, vast, red, oppressive, and they seem to watch you as much as you're told to watch them. This is not a dream. You're not a noblewoman from some Tang dynasty scroll. You are a servant, and your life now belongs to the palace. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere cold and rainy or warm and breezy, drop your location and the time you're listening. I love seeing where everyone's dozing off from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start your first morning before dawn, not sunrise before sunrise. The lamps are still burning weakly from last night, their oil low, their flames fluttering like exhausted dancers. You're one of 100 girls lined up for morning inspection. Hair tightly coiled, eyes cast down, hands neatly folded. You've practiced this posture in your sleep. You had to. Because slipping up means losing face. And losing face here is just the beginning of losing everything. Behind you, someone whispers a prayer not to the gods, but to her grandmother. That she'll still be alive when she sees her again. That she'll remember what her village smells like. You barely remember your own anymore. They say the Forbidden City has 9,999 rooms. You'll see maybe 12 of them your entire life. You're handed your broom, your tasks, and a stern warning. Don't make eye contact with the eunuchs. That's not because they're dangerous, though they might be. It's because everything in this palace is about status. And you're statusless. You are meant to blend into the jade tiles like moss. Useful, unobtrusive, and replaceable. As the sun begins to rise, the outer courtyards fill with movement. Ceremonial drums thud in the distance like a heartbeat. For a creature that doesn't love you, the emperor will not rise for another hour. But already, everything is being scrubbed and polished for his gaze. And yet, he will not look. He does not need to. His presence is like gravity, it moves everything without ever having to be seen. By mid-morning, your legs ache. You've scrubbed floors that didn't look dirty and dusted silk screens that no one has touched in months. You're told it's not about cleanliness, it's about readiness. Always be ready. Always be alert. Even sleep must be light, curled in a corner with one ear tuned to footsteps and one eye half open. And when you do get sleep, dreams are not encouraged. They're a luxury. A sign your mind isn't occupied enough. You should be too exhausted to imagine anything. There's a popular myth that palace maids lived among beauty. Yes, the tiles are glazed like turquoise seas. Yes, the gardens bloom with peonies as big as your face. But you don't get to linger. You walk past beauty like a beggar on the edge of a feast, close enough to smell, never to taste. Around noon, you carry a teapot through one of the side halls and catch a glimpse of the Empress's shadow, passing behind a silk curtain. You freeze, you bow, even though she likely didn't see you. Because if she had, and you hadn't bowed, someone else would have seen, and that would have been enough. Remember that emperor you serve, the Son of Heaven. You'll never speak to him, probably won't even see him. But every brushstroke in your daily life bends toward his unseen will. Your meals are rationed based on his seasonal preferences. Your work pace accelerates if he's rumored to be touring the South Gardens. Once, a girl you knew was demoted just because she accidentally wore a shade of yellow too close to Imperial gold. That color was sacred, and she paid for it in years of extra duty. It's not all strict rules and calligraphy scrolls, though sometimes you laugh. Quietly behind your hand, behind a door, behind the laundry room curtain, you make up names for the more pompous eunuchs. You mimic the way one of the nobles walks, with his chin pointed so high you swear it touches the sky. These tiny rebellions are your spark plugs. You need them to survive. Fringe lore among the maids says that if you cry on your first night, the spirits of the palace will protect you. If you don't cry, They think you're too strong and leave you alone. You cried. At least you think you did. It's hard to remember it, all blurred between fear and fatigue. By late afternoon, you're finally allowed a small bowl of rice and vegetable soup. You eat it with the urgency of someone who knows it could be taken away mid-bite. Then, back. To work, always back to work. The scent of the palace changes with the light. At night, the air grows colder, sharper. You begin to learn the meaning of sounds. A laugh behind a screen. A sudden silence in the corridor. A thud you never ask about. Historians still argue whether the daily life of a palace maid was more ceremonial or servile, but honestly, you don't have time for that debate. You just know your feet hurt and your hands are starting to blister. And as the moon creeps up over the roofs of a city, you'll never leave. You prepare to curl up under your thin blanket in the corner of a shared dormitory room. The girl beside you mutters something in her sleep. You don't understand the dialect. You don't need to. Loneliness speaks every language. This is your first full day in the palace. There will be thousands more. No one will count them, except maybe you. You're 9, maybe 10, it's hard to know for sure. Birthdays aren't really celebrated when your family is just trying to get by. But this year, something big happened. Your mother gave you a red ribbon. Your father looked away while she tied it into your hair, and you left with the government recruiter before the morning dew had dried. Technically, they didn't sell you. Technically, they call it offering you for service. A prestigious placement, an opportunity, a future. But you saw the copper coins change hands. Not enough to change anyone's life. Just enough to buy a new piglet. Or maybe fix that leak in the roof. So now you're on a cart with a dozen other girls. Bumping down the stone roads of some dusty province, headed toward the capital. One girl cries for her brother. Another tries to remember how her mother's soup tasted. You don't cry. You just keep touching the ribbon in your hair and wondering if it'll still be red after the dust settles. When the city walls appear on the horizon, it doesn't feel real. The capital is enormous stone dragons, thick gates, guards with spears taller than your whole family stacked on top of each other. You half expect it all to vanish like a dream. But it doesn't. You pass through the gates, past marketplaces, and painted wagons, deeper and deeper into the belly of something too big to grasp. Then it happens, the first glimpse of the Forbidden City. Its rooftops glow like flames in the sun, gold and sharp and silent. Even the air changes. It's less forgiving here, tighter somehow. Like every breath has to pass inspection. The guards announce your arrival to someone with too many scrolls, and not enough patience. You're counted, prodded, inspected like produce. One girl has a bruise on her shin and is immediately removed from the group. You never see her again. That night, you're herded into a training hall, and the rules begin. No talking during meals. No eye contact with nobility. No running, laughing, slouching, spitting, chewing too loud, chewing too slow, standing too close, standing too far. You don't know how you're supposed to stand anymore. The trainers are older women, former maids who retired, and now spend their days molding the next batch. They don't smile. They have little sticks they tap against your ankles to adjust your posture. They tell you the importance of being invisible. A good maid, one says, is like a shadow, present, but never noticed. You spend your days learning how to bow properly. There are 5 distinct levels of bowing, each depending on the rank of the person in front of you. Mess them up, and you could accidentally insult the emperor's cousin's 3rd wife's aunt. Yes. Apparently that's a real person. You also learn how to walk without sound. It's harder than it looks. No stomping, no dragging, just a gentle whisper of motion, like your feet are floating across rice paper. One girl fails the walking test 3 times in a row, and is reassigned to the latrines. Nobody wants to end up cleaning chamber pots. The threat hangs over every lesson. As the weeks pass, the cart girls slowly become palace maids, and you cut your hair to regulation length. You wear the stiff cotton robes that itch like 1,000 ants. You eat rice that's always a little overcooked and pickled vegetables so sour your teeth ache. You memorize room names, duty rotations, rank structures, and emergency fire procedures. There's even a song you're forced to learn. It's about loyalty to the emperor, but everyone sings it half-heartedly. One girl jokes that she hums it in her sleep. The rest of you laugh, a little too loudly. The instructor hears, and all of you spend the next day scrubbing flagstones with rags. Still, you start to adapt. Your eyes get used to candlelight. Your ears tune to whispers. You learn who to avoid, who to flatter, who not to borrow hairpins from Mentiv eventually. After what feels like years but is probably just a month you're selected for assignment. When they call your name, your heart skips. Then it skips again when they say outer court duties. It's not the worst. Not the best. At least you're not in the kitchens or cleaning fish guts. Your first assignment is delivering teacups to the Hall of Literary Brilliance. It sounds fancy. It's not. You carry trays of porcelain, trying not to trip, while the scholars inside argue about Confucian principles and never notice you exist. On your way back, you pause near a window. Outside, the sun is setting over the palace rooftops, casting golden shadows across the red walls. You let yourself stare for 3 seconds before remembering the rule: don't linger. Still, those 3 seconds are enough to etch the moment into your brain like a painting. You'll remember that glow the next time you're punished for standing too slow. One afternoon, you overhear 2 older maids whispering about a girl who rose all the way to concubine status. She started as a linen washer, they say. Got noticed by a prince. Now she wears silk and eats dates stuffed with walnuts. But they also say she hasn't smiled in months. Some call that a tragedy. Others call it progress. Historians still argue whether such rises in status were real opportunities or rare myths meant to keep maids docile. For now, it's just a story, and you hold on to it like a talisman. That night, as you roll out your thin sleeping mat and try to ignore the snores of the girl beside you, you wonder what your family is doing. Maybe your little brother got the piglet after all. Maybe they don't talk about you. Or maybe they tell neighbors, proudly, that you served the emperor. You sigh. The red ribbon is long gone. But sometimes, when the wind shifts just right through the courtyard, you swear you can still smell the dust of home. From the moment you arrive in the palace, you're taught to hold your tongue, literally and metaphorically. At first, you think it's just politeness. Later, you realize it's about survival. Words are dangerous. They hang in the air like incense, curling into ears that weren't meant to hear them. Here, one misplaced syllable can tangle your fate. Your first full day on duty ends in silence, and the next begins the same. You wake before light, fold your bedding into a square so precise you could measure it with a ruler, and step into the corridor with your eyes cast down. The air is cold. The tiles beneath your feet are colder. You tell yourself the chill helps you stay alert. You've learned to walk lightly, but now you have to learn to listen loudly. Every creak in the floorboards, every rustle of silk down, the hall at all, tells a story. Sometimes it's just a maid carrying laundry. Sometimes it's a senior consort in a very bad mood. You train your ears like a spy. You become fluent in silence. There are entire conversations in glances. A flick of the eyebrow means the steward is nearby. A twitch of the mouth says she's watching. You become so good at reading expressions that you can tell which eunuchs are angry just by how they close a door. Slowly, loudly, deliberately. It's not just about watching others. You watch yourself too. How you stand, how your hands rest, how often you blink. You learn the art of appearing busy while doing absolutely nothing, smoothing already smooth fabric, repolishing a spotless table, fussing with a flower arrangement, just because you saw a supervisor approaching. They say palace life is like living in a constant exam room, except no one tells you what the test is, and the results determine how many bruises you'll go to bed with. Meals are taken in near silence. You eat from shared bowls, always last if your rank is low, always seated by roll knot, by friendship. A whisper about someone's soup being too salty might seem harmless, but it turns into a rumor, which becomes an insult, which becomes a demotion. So you chew quietly and nod at nothing. One day, you pass by a courtyard and see a senior maid kneeling in the corner. Not praying, not meditating, just kneeling. She's being punished for an appropriate tone while greeting a concubine. You ask another maid what she said. The answer, "Good morning." Too cheerful, the other girl shrugs. too loud. And then she hurries off to scrub a staircase, leaving you to wonder how warm a good morning is supposed to sound. When your ribs are poking through your tunic, you learn to cry without moving your face. No sound, no expression. Just a blink that takes too long. A breath that catches for half a second longer than it should. If anyone notices, they pretend not to. There's a quiet understanding. Today, it's her. Tomorrow, it might be you. Historians still argue whether these strict behavioral codes were a form of cultural refinement or pure control. You know what they were. They were the palace's way of erasing you, turning you from a girl with dreams into a perfectly mannered shadow. Sometimes, you think about your name. Back home, it was shouted by your mother, whispered by your younger siblings, scratched onto the side of a basket you used for picking beans. Here, it's a title, a rank, a designation. No one calls you you anymore. Except once, you're sweeping a veranda when an older maid, one who's been here long enough to forget how long, leans close and says your name. Just once, just a whisper, and it breaks something open inside you. You don't respond. You don't dare. But later, when you're alone in the laundry room, you whisper it to yourself like a charm, just to remember it still belongs to you. At night, the dormitory hums with tiny noises. Nothing loud, just the sound of soft breathing, the occasional rustle of straw mats, and the faint tapping of fingernails from the girl who picks at her own skin when she's anxious. You lie still, staring at the beams above, counting breaths instead of stars. There are no stars here, just a ceiling you'll never rise past. Despite the rigid routines, every day brings a new surprise. Like the time a eunuch stumbles through the courtyard in a panic, trailing feathers. Someone forgot to secure the pheasants for the royal banquet, and now half the poultry is flapping around the garden like escaped prisoners. The other maids giggle quietly, of course. One brave girl even says, "At least someone got free today." You don't know her name, but you remember the way her smile refused to apologize. Quirky tales circulate in whispers. There's one about a maid who pretended to be mute for 5 years to avoid gossip trouble. Another about the one who memorized the emperor's concubine schedule and used it to avoid crossing paths with angry rivals. Some of them are probably made up. Most of them are survival manuals disguised as bedtime stories. One evening, a new girl arrives. She's taller than most, with defiant eyes and a mouth that twitches like it's always halfway to saying something dangerous. She bows too slowly. She makes a face at the sour soup. She's trouble, and just like that, she's gone the next morning. No one explains. They never do. The message is clear. Silence isn't just a policy, it's protection. It's not all grim, though. There are moments, rare but golden, when you steal a smile from someone across the room. When you share a leftover dumpling. When the sun hits the lacquered walls just right and turns the palace into a painting. You hold on to those moments like beads on a string. You count them on long nights. You replay them in your mind when a supervisor scolds you for folding napkins. The southern way instead of the northern way. As if linen can tell the difference. And every now and then, you catch yourself laughing silently at the absurdity of it all. Like how there's an entire rule book about how to kneel. Or how the Hall of Harmony is the least harmonious place you've ever been. You're still young, but you already know. Life in the palace isn't lived in words. It's lived in glances, pauses, carefully timed coughs, and the art of holding everything in until it turns into habit. You wake up before the rooster. Not your rooster, those don't exist in the palace. This one lives in a gilded cage behind the Hall of Supreme Purity, and it crows with the self-importance of a minor noble. You hate him. He's smug and punctual, and somehow, always right. Today is rotation day. That sounds official, but it's just code for being moved around like spoons in a drawer. You don't control your duties, you're assigned. You could be dusting lanterns in the corridor of rain one week, and the next, plunging your hands into ash buckets in the incense halls. It depends on who's in favor, who's in disgrace, and whether someone in the upper ranks misread your bow last. Tuesday, you shuffle into formation with the others. Another long line of tired girls in slightly different shades of grayish blue. Tunics. Every crease is inspected, every posture evaluated. One thread out of place on your sleeve, and suddenly you're negligent. One glance at the wrong official, and you're impertinent. The official list of infractions is longer than the Book of Rights, and about twice as vague. There's a dizzying maze of ranks among the palace maids. You start at the bottom, of course, miscellaneous female servant, 5th grade. Which sounds like a title, but mostly means the one scrubbing the courtyard tiles with a toothbrush-sized brush. After that comes assistant cleaning, maiden, then assigned inner attendant, and so on. You don't memorize them because they matter. You memorize them because one wrong address can land you elbow deep in chamber pots for a week. Promotions do happen, theoretically, but you begin to suspect they're like palace unicorns, rumored, admired, never confirmed. The truth is, promotion depends less on skill and more on your ability to avoid scandal, curry favor, and survive long enough to outlast 5 others. And even then, your prize might just be an extra bowl of millet and a better quality rag. Today, you're reassigned from corridor sweeping to garment folding in the wardrobe hall. Sounds elegant, right? It's not. The wardrobe hall smells like damp silk, old perfume, and ambition. Racks of embroidered robes line the walls, each tagged with little bamboo slips, bearing cryptic notes like use for morning audience on double fifth, or avoid if consort May is present. Your job, fold them gently. Exactly, there are specific angles to observe. Leaves must lie flat, collars tucked with a single motion. You once saw a girl get a slap for folding a court robe with too much energy. That's right, her. Folding was aggressive. It's a skill set that would baffle any resume writer. There's a rhythm to it, though. Fold, smooth, rotate. The silk is cool under your fingers, slick and elegant, whispering secrets of lives you'll never live. You trace the dragons and phoenixes with your eyes, but never your fingers touching the embroidery is forbidden. Even your curiosity is on a leash. While you work, a junior supervisor prowls behind you like a nervous cat. Her job is to spot slouching, yawning, or God forbid, personal thoughts. She once caught a maid mouthing the lyrics of a folk song, and made her copy Confucian aphorisms until her hands cramped. The punishment was less about the song, and more about reminding you your mind should never wander too far from duty. Historians still argue whether this obsessive attention to behavior was rooted in Confucian ideals of harmony, or simply an elaborate system of fear. Honestly, you don't care. All you know is, you're tired, your back hurts, and one more badly folded robe might ruin your week. One afternoon, a senior maid tells you about the Hawkeye test. It's a surprise inspection. The head eunuch enters without warning, selects a robe at random, and examines it for creases, scent, and symmetrical embroidery display. Fail the test. Everyone in the room gets demoted. Pass it. No one thanks you. You just get to keep doing exactly what you're doing. So yes, you're now folding robes with the kind of precision usually reserved for weaponry or surgical instruments. You use your elbow to measure distances. Breathe only through your nose to avoid saliva droplets, and mentally chant crease-free, shame-free like a spell. It's ridiculous. And yet, it's also the only kind of power you're allowed to hold. Sometimes, amidst the ritual, something strange happens. You find a note, tucked into a collar, slid between layers of muslin. Once it was a scrap of poetry, another time, a love letter, likely from a guard, to a concubine. You never tell. You just read, memorize, and burn. For a few seconds, you're part of a story that's not yours, but could be. One day, a robe with silver clouds and jade cranes passes through your hands. It smells like peonies and saffron, and someone whispers it belongs to the Empress herself. You fold it with reverence, fear, and a little pride. Later, someone tells you that's not the Empress's, her cousin's, the one who hates silver. You laugh under your breath. You've been worshipping the wrong garment. Again, the wardrobe hall is also where palace gossip flows like weak tea sottle, bitter, easy to spill. A favorite concubine fainted in the throne hall. A eunuch was caught stealing pearls. A maid, they say, was transferred to the western compound, which everyone knows is code for punishment, or worse, sometimes. A story circulates about a girl who used to fold robes just like you, then caught the eye of a visiting prince, and now lives in a pavilion with swan-shaped lanterns. These stories are like sugar in the soup. Not nutritious, but you need them anyway. But for every fairy tale, there's a shadow. One of your folding companions is missing today. No explanation, just gone. Her name is never mentioned again. You learn once more that silence is the palace's favorite language. By evening, you return to your dormitory, wrists aching, knees stiff. You lie down, let your limbs go heavy, and replay each crease you smoothed like a mantra. You didn't fold silver cranes for the Empress, but maybe you didn't get anyone demoted today. That counts as a win. And as your eyes close, a single thought hovers in a world where every action is measured. Your best hope is to leave no trace. You start the day with a bath. Not for you, of course you're not that lucky. You're preparing the bathing room for a noblewoman who prefers her water infused with orchid petals, goat milk, and a splash of snowmelt from Mount Tai. The snowmelt is powdered, stored in a ceramic jar, and costs more than your annual rice allowance. Before the bath begins, everything must be sent. That means no garlic for breakfast, no medicinal balms, and definitely no sweaty armpits. There's a list of forbidden smells posted on the wall in the Hall of Cleanliness, ironically right next to a chamber pot. It includes the obvious body odor, stale breath, and the bizarre radishes, dried fish, camphor, even ink. Ink you once got sent out of the room because you helped the calligraphy maid earlier that morning and reeked of brushwater. Whatever that is, the body isn't just physical in the palace, it's political. Every breath you take could insult someone's nose. So the senior maids teach you tricks. Suck on dried lotus root to neutralize stomach smell. Chew mint leaves before entering high-rank areas. Rub crushed chrysanthemum on your wrists. It's less beauty ritual, more olfactory camouflage. You learn fast. Because the punishments, they're brutal. One girl, newly arrived, accidentally sneezed while folding undergarments for a secondary consort. Just a sneeze. She was reassigned to the night soil team for a month, which, if you're wondering, means scooping waste buckets under moonlight, while rats applaud politely from the shadows. Today, you're on undergarment detail again, and don't laugh, because it's serious work. Royal underthings are considered sacred textiles. They're hand-sewn by designated seamstresses and washed in water, boiled with pine resin and bamboo ash. Not for sanitation. No, that combo's supposed to repel evil spirits. Historians still argue whether this belief was based on Taoist ritual, or just superstition turned into policy. Either way, your hands reek of tree bark all day. In the laundry courtyard, you and 6 others scrub in silence. The water is cold, even in summer. Your fingers go numb after the first basin. The stones beneath your knees bite into your bones. You look like monks praying to some fabric god, rhythmically dunking, scrubbing, rinsing, and laying flat the emperor's socks. Yes, those two are sacred. They get brushed with goat hair gloves before drying. Laundry, ironically, is also where most stories are born. It's one of the few places maids are left alone long enough to whisper. One girl tells the tale of a palace maid who once wore an empress's discarded underrobe just to see what it felt like. They say she vanished the next day. Another girl claims that if you soak your own scarf in the empress's rinse water and wear it for 3 days, you'll dream of your future husband. You smile, but you don't try it. You already know better. There are legends of ghosts, too. The laundry courtyard is old, older than the inner court, some say. And it's said to be haunted by the souls of maids who died in service and were buried without names. Every time your basin water ripples without cause, someone mutters a prayer under their breath. You start doing it too, just in case. That ripple happened today, twice. No wind, no footsteps, just ripple. But of course, you don't mention it aloud. Talking about ghosts draws attention, and attention is dangerous. By midday, you're lightheaded from steam and lye. The smell of pine sap clings to your braid. Your stomach growls, but the next meal is still hours away. You're allowed a sip of ginger water, lukewarm and bitter. It's meant to revitalize you. It doesn't. A supervisor passes by and eyes your drying rack. She frowns at the angle of a hanging shift. You've draped it too close to another garment. Never mind that wind doesn't blow in the laundry courtyard. Proximity, she scolds, invites misfortune. You nod, rehang the cloth, and silently recite your favorite curse under your breath. There's a brief break when you're sent to collect folded linens from the storage room. The corridor there is cool, dark, and best of all empty. For 5 minutes you breathe. You stare at the neat stacks of fabric and pretend they're clouds. You imagine climbing into them, floating away over the rooftops, maybe all the way back to wherever home used to be. Then someone clears their throat behind you. Another maid. Her expression says, "Don't get caught daydreaming." You nod. She nods. And just like that, the dream ends. One of your least favorite jobs is it's usually given to low-ranked girls. The task: sniff undergarments for mildew or the faintest whiff of rotting energy, whatever that means. It's humiliating. But oddly, also a trusted responsibility. You're the last line of defense between a bad scent and an Imperial tantrum. One time, you did catch something a sour tang in a cotton undershirt meant for the third consort. You flagged it. The robe was discarded. You got praised. Quietly, a pat on the shoulder. No promotion, but also no punishment. And in palace math, that equals success. The day ends with your fingernails gray from detergent powder and your nose so overloaded you can no longer smell your own skin. A girl from your dormitory greets you with a joke. You smell like an herbal remedy that lost its will to live. You chuckle. It's the closest thing to affection anyone's offered all. Week before sleep, you rinse your hands in rosewater. Not for luxury, just to mask the resin. You lie on your mat, listen to the snores and coughs around you, and try not to think about tomorrow's duties. But your mind drifts anyway. You remember the ghosts in the laundry water. You remember the girl who wore forbidden silk. You remember the story of the snowmelt in the bath, and you wonder somewhere, beyond these walls, does anyone really know how much of your day was spent just trying not to smell? Night has just slipped away, but you're already wide awake. It's laundry rotation again, but today's shift has a different flavor. Corpse linens. Not your usual bedsheets or robes, but the ceremonial cloth used to wrap the bodies of nobles who've ascended to heaven. That's the official phrase. You know better. There's a heaviness to the air on corpse linen days. Not just because death lingers in the fabric, but because the work takes place in the stonewash yard, a cold, low-sunken basin near the back wall of the inner court. It's always in shadow, even when the sun is high. The bricks stay wet, even in drought. No one knows why. You and 4 other maids have the job today. No one speaks. You don't need to. Each of you knows the protocol. Wear gloves of waxed cotton, don't touch your own face, and never under any circumstance let a linen touch the ground. If it does, it must be burned. And that's on you. There's an old superstition whispered about this corner of the palace that the water here remembers grief. That every sob, every final breath, gets soaked into the stone. Historians dismiss it as folklore, but you notice, even the boldest eunuchs don't linger near this place. Your task is mechanical. Dip, scrub, lift, wring, repeat. But your mind drifts, as it often does here. You think about the stories of palace ghosts, especially the one about the girl in Witamaid who reportedly died while cleaning the Empress's sick room. Some say she was poisoned by accident. Others say it was punishment for delivering bad news. Either way, her spirit's said to haunt the basins, ringing her own funeral shroud forever. You haven't seen her, but one of the girls in your shift swears she has. It's not the only strange thing that happens here. Yesterday, a wet cloth fluttered without wind. A few days ago, someone found a coin at the bottom of the wash pool, an old Imperial issue, centuries out of circulation. You all took turns holding it, as if maybe it would grant protection. Then, wordlessly, dropped it back in. Weirdest of all. The laundry ghosts never seem malicious. They're just tired, like you. There's a moment of stillness in the late morning. Your hands are raw. Your knees ache. You're halfway through a particularly heavy brocade sheet when you hear a splash sharp and close. You freeze. You glance at the water. Nothing. No ripple. No drip from the line above. You glance at the other girls. Nobody speaks. One of them slowly nods. You all go back to work. Ghosts or no ghosts, the linens won't wash themselves. By midday, the work shifts. Now you're callers for court mourning robes. These aren't for servants, they're for nobles, and they have to be perfect. The fabric is black, but must dry without splotches. The collars are stiff enough to cut your fingers if you fold them wrong. One girl accidentally creases hers off-center. She hides it. You all pretend not to see. The supervisor comes in later and praises your section. You're not sure if she saw the mistake and let it slide, or if she genuinely didn't notice. Either way, no one says a word. You all live to launder another day. There's a tiny shrine tucked into the stone wall near the drying racks. It's unofficial, someone built it out of leftover tiles and broken ceramic pieces, placing inside it a dried lotus and a few blackened incense sticks. No one claims to maintain it. But somehow, fresh rice appears there every few days. Hints, understood to be for the ghosts. For the girls who washed their way into legend. For those who didn't get proper rites. One of the older maids says she heard a rumor, probably false. Probably embellished that, if you whisper your true name into the shrine and leave a hairpin, your soul won't be trapped in palace walls when you die. It will find a way out. You think about that sometimes. You've seen what happens to girls who die here. The palace doesn't hold funerals for maids. No mourning robes. No incense procession. Just a quiet removal, and an even quieter replacement. And suddenly, everyone talks about her in past tense. Or doesn't at all. Some nights, you swear you can hear the drip 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 of laundry water, long after the courtyard's been emptied. Sometimes you even hear ringing, like fabric twisted, by hands that aren't there. But maybe it's just your own memories. Not all of the laundry ghosts are dead, though. Some of them are just broken. There's one girl Jai who stopped speaking 3 years ago. She does her job perfectly. Never late, never wrong, but never a word. They say she was once accused of breaking a jade comb. It wasn't her, but the accusation stuck. The comb belonged to a minor concubine. The punishment was 3 days. In the punishment quarters, no light, no food. She came back different. You watch Jai as she hangs her linens, her eyes vacant but her hands exact. She folds as if her soul still lives somewhere deep inside the cloth. You ask an older maid once, what happens if we make a mistake on funeral cloth? The reply comes without emotion. The dead don't complain, but the living do. That night, you get to go to bed earlier, ward, for finishing your shift without error. You curl up, exhausted, your hands still pruny from the water. Someone whispers a joke about laundry ghosts smelling like pickled cabbage. You laugh quietly, of course. Laughter is dangerous here, but sometimes it's all you have. Before sleep takes you, you picture the tiny shrine by the stone wall. You wonder who built it. You wonder if anyone's listening, and for the first time in a while, you say your name, your real name, inside your own head. Just to remember it's still there. Just in case you ever need to whisper it into stone. Today, you are on food detail. Which sounds nice until you realize it means hours in the outer kitchens. Elbows deep in everything except what you'd actually want to eat. The palace kitchens aren't like the warm, smoky ones back home, where someone's always humming and taste testing. No, this place is a military operation disguised as a banquet. Fire, smoke, and shouting. Dozens of cooks working like synchronized dancers with ladles and cleavers instead of fans. You're just part of the background rhythm, another cog. In the culinary machine, you're not allowed near the actual stove fires. That's a job for senior kitchen staff and special eunuchs who've trained for years. You're assigned to the vegetable washing station. All day, you clean greens that have already been cleaned twice, but still might be politically soiled. Which sounds absurd until someone explains. A spotted leaf could be interpreted as a bad omen if it ends up in a dish served to the emperor's third aunt's daughter-in-law during a celebration for her third pregnancy. No pressure. The vegetables come from Imperial gardens or tribute boxes from far-off provinces. Dragon fruit from the southern coast. Lotus roots from a prefecture that's been in drought for months. How they got them, no one asks. Each piece of produce has more paperwork than your birth certificate. You don't dare bruise a single stem. There's A story about a girl who dropped a cabbage. Just one. It rolled into the dirt. She tried to clean it and pretend nothing happened. Someone saw. She was reassigned to scullery work. That's not just scrubbing dishes. That's scrubbing pots used to clean other dishes. The bottom of the food pyramid. Today's big event is a banquet in the Hall of Imperial Harmony, which means pressure. Everything must be flawless. You're handed a sack of ginger roots and a tiny knife and told to shave slices as thin as promises. That's an actual quote. And they mean it. You work at a bench with 3 other maids. One girl cuts too thick, and her slices get tossed with a sneer. You do yours, thinner. Your hands cramp from the tension. You're not even sure ginger is supposed to look transparent, but no one asks questions in here unless they want answers. That hurt. The smells in the kitchen are intense. Chili oil, vinegar, fermented black beans, steaming duck fat. You're hungry. You're always hungry. You've been hungry for 3 years now. But you never get to eat the food you help prepare. It's sampled by tasters, sent in porcelain dishes, and arranged like paintings. You're lucky if you get a scoop of plain rice and cabbage water at the end of your shift. Cook walks past with a lacquered tray holding dumplings shaped like tiny birds. He catches you looking and smirks. Smells good, doesn't it? You nod. He offers nothing more. That's the closest thing to flirtation you'll ever experience in this palace, and even that felt risky. The kitchen also has its superstitions. No whistling bad luck. Never say done, say satisfied, and always toss a pinch of salt into the corner before starting morning prep. The oldest cook claims it keeps demons out of the soup. Historians still debate whether kitchen rituals had Taoist origins, or were just stress-induced coping strategies. You're inclined to believe both. Midday, something goes wrong. One of the steamer baskets explodes. Too much pressure. Someone misjudged. No one's hurt, but everyone freezes. The head kitchen eunuch storms in, throws a ladle at the wall, and demands a recount of all abalone being prepped. A recount of abalone. Guess who gets chosen to count them? You. There are 217 pieces. You know, because you count them twice. Your hands stink of sea brine and frustration, but you get the number right. You're not praised, you're ignored, which, again, in palace math, equals success. Later, you're assigned to rinse rice. It sounds easy, it's not. You're expected to rinse it exactly 9 times, not 8, not 10. And you can't use the same water twice. The first few rinses are milky, then clearer. You watch the water change and wonder if your life is being rinsed, 2 layer by layer, until you forget what it originally held. You overhear a senior cook saying the emperor himself once rejected an entire meal because the soup was emotionally cold. You don't know what that means, and frankly, you're terrified to find out. In the evening, you carry 2 baskets of used peelings to the compost yard. On your way, you pass the banquet hall just for a moment. Inside, the courtiers are laughing. The light is golden. Music trickles through the screen doors. And the smell. Spiced pork. Sweet bean dumplings. Roasted chestnuts. You pause. Just a second. That's when a eunuch appears behind you and says, flatly, move. You bow. Resume your walk, and remind yourself, standing still too long is the same as overreaching. And overreaching is the first step toward falling. Once a girl from your old dormitory tried to sneak a leftover duck bone into her sleeve. She was caught. They didn't beat her. That would have been too loud. They made her kneel at the edge of the kitchen gate and read out ingredient lists from the royal cookbook. For 2 days, now she flinches whenever she hears the word galangal. You return your baskets, wash your hands for the 20th time, and collapse onto your mat after roll call. You're too tired to untie your sash. Your fingers still smell faintly of scallion and soy sauce. You close your eyes and picture the banquet plates. They're perfectly arranged fruit towers, and you wonder if the nobles ever noticed the hands behind the presentation. Probably not. But tomorrow, those same hands will be back cutting, slicing, rinsing, folding, making harmony out of hunger, because that's the real art of the palace kitchen. Making beauty you'll never taste. Morning begins with shouting. Not at you for once, but close enough that your shoulders instinctively tense. Someone dropped a porcelain teacup, not a special one, not royal, not inscribed with gold dragons. Just an ordinary palace cup, one of thousands. But it broke, and in this place, broken things don't just get swept away. They get questioned, examined, and often punished. The girl responsible is younger than you, maybe 13. Her hands shake as she tries to explain, but her words come out in a tangle. The overseer doesn't listen. She simply points to the punishment wall. The girl is escorted away. Later, you hear she's assigned to rat patrol for a week. The rats are winning. Today, you've been reassigned again. This time, to lamp-duty. It sounds small, a corner job. But in the Imperial Palace, even light is a matter of hierarchy. The lamps used in courtly halls, concubines' chambers, ceremonial rooms, and meditation spaces each have their own shapes, wicks, and rules. Some burn oil from apricot kernels. Some use scented wax. Some, if you're very unlucky, run on powdered deer fat, which smells exactly as awful as it sounds. Your job today is to trim wicks and clean soot. Sounds simple, except you're using a bamboo-handled blade that's sharper than any logic exam and small enough to slice your fingernail without noticing. You hold it like a calligraphy brush, not too firm, not too loose. One wrong flick, and the flame gutter's wrong. And the concubine, whose lamp it is, might get a headache and then everyone above you has one too. First stop, the silken plum chamber, home of one of the less talked about concubines. You don't know her name. No one says it out loud. She's not in favor, but she's not forgotten, either a dangerous place to be. The room is cold, always cold. Her lamps are glass with soft pink bases, shaped like inverted flowers. You kneel. Trim the first wick, light it just enough, then shield the flicker with your hand as you replace the dome. The concubine watches you, but doesn't speak. Her hair is too tightly coiled. Her sleeves barely move. She's a statue painted with loneliness. Outside the chamber, another maid murmurs. She used to dance for the emperor. No further context. Just that. Enough. Lamp duty has another danger. It takes you into places where the walls have eyes. You go from chamber to chamber, adjusting light for people who may or may not see you. A wrong glance at a consort's mirror, and someone accuses you of spying. A reflection of a secret letter. A sudden change in tone. Everything can be evidence, if someone wants it to be. In the Hall of Elegant Fragrance, you kneel to light a lamp that hasn't burned in weeks. Dust clings to the edges of the frame. The wick light's crooked. You exhale slowly and fix it. Behind you, someone clears their throat. You freeze. It's a junior eunuch, young, arrogant, always walking a little too close to trouble. He asks if you've seen a scroll left by the calligraphy master. You haven't. You say so. He lingers a little too long, then mutters something about maid eyes being too small to notice important things, and walks off. That's the end of it this time. There's an unspoken rule in the palace. Never be where something important goes missing, no matter how innocent. Missing jewels, inkstones, even poetry drafts. If you were near it, you did it. That's the logic. Proof is optional. You remember the story of Lian Hua, who once dusted the Empress's bronze mirror, and was later blamed for a hairline crack. Found days later, they said her breath must have fogged it wrong. She denied it. She was sent to the tea caddy room for 2 months. It doesn't sound bad until you realize that room is the size of a closet and smells like moldy jasmine. Number, window. No talking. Historians still argue whether these elaborate palaces' punishments were about discipline, or simply a power game, a way to keep everyone small. You don't argue. You live the answer by mid-afternoon. You've moved on to exterior lanterns. These are big paper ones, painted with brushy cranes and peach blossoms. They swing lightly in the breeze. Your job is to unhook them, scrape off wax residue, inspect the tassels, and rehang them in perfect symmetry. If they're not level, it reflects badly on the lady of the house. If one lantern swings more than the other, bad omen. You've seen. Nobles yell over wind patterns, convinced it signals disfavor from the ancestors. You don't try to explain physics. That would be suicidal. One of the tassels rips as you retie the cord. You panic, but another maid sees and quickly swaps it with one from an unused lantern. No one notices you owe her. In palace math, that means you'll give her your share of the ginger biscuits at next week's break. If you both make it that far on your last stop of the day, you light the meditation lamps outside the Hall of Celestial Virtue. These must burn at exactly the same height for an hour. Not more, not less. There's a little sand timer you set beside them. And once the last grain drops, you extinguish them without letting the smoke rise too fast. Otherwise, it's believed to draw in malicious spirits. Is it true? Probably not. But you've seen. A girl gets slapped for letting her smoke trail linger past the lintel. So yes, you now consider air currents a vital part of your skill set. As the sun begins to set, the lanterns across the palace flicker to life. They cast strange golden light on red walls and black tiles. The palace starts to glow, not warm, but eerie, like a dream you can't wake from. You return to your dorm with wax on your cuffs and soot under your nails. Your hands smell faintly of camellia oil and singed paper. You fall into bed and stare at the ceiling. You think about all the rooms you walked through today, all the people who didn't see you, but whose lives you helped light. You think of the concubine in the cold room, of the crooked wick, of the tassel swap. And as your eyes drift shut, a thought flickers. Even shadows cast light. Sometimes, you're jolted awake before dawn, not by a rooster, or a bell, or even the clatter of wooden slippers. No, today's alarm is the sharp, echoing clang of a gong, struck far too early and far too loudly to mean anything good. You sit up on your mat, heart thumping. Around you, the dormitory rustles with sleepy panic. Someone whispers, "Inspection day." Of course it is. Once every few weeks. The Lady of Internal Order, a title that sounds ceremonial until you see her razor-sharp fan conducts. A surprise review of the maid corps. It's not about checking for dirt. It's about discipline, posture, and the endlessly vague idea of correct inner virtue. You stand in a courtyard, so cold, your breath looks like incense smoke. Rows of girls shiver in silence. The lady arrives, with 4 assistants and 2 eunuchs, carrying scrolls. She doesn't yell. She doesn't need to. She walks slowly, eyes scanning like a hawk sizing up prey. Her gown rustles like paper. Her perfume smells like crushed magnolia and expectation. One by one, she points. You slouched. You wrinkled cuff. You. She doesn't finish, just stares until the girl turns pale. When she reaches your row, you brace yourself. She passes without pausing. You don't feel pride. You feel relief. And in the palace, that's the same thing. After inspection, you're not given a break. No, that would make sense. You're sent straight to scroll room detail, a job that sounds like something out of a painting, delicate calligraphy, silk, ribbons, whispers of poetry, but is in reality just dusting. Lots and lots of dusting. The palace scroll vault contains thousands of text official records, religious treatises, bureaucratic reports, even letters from previous dynasties. Your job is to wipe their casings gently with treated cloths, check for mildew, and never, ever read them. Reading is not your place. Not unless you want to get reassigned to candlestick scraping. Still, your eyes betray you. You catch glimpses. Words flicker past like fireflies. Rebellion, moon offering, salt tax increase. You learn more in half a scroll glance than in a week of whispered gossip. Historians would give anything to see what you just saw, but you have to pretend you didn't. You swallow curiosity like it's spoiled broth. One scroll in particular catches your attention, bound in white silk, tied with black thread. It's marked for eyes of the Empress only. You touch nothing. You breathe quietly. But that scroll will haunt your imagination for days. Historians still debate whether palace maids contributed to secret state knowledge, whether they were silent observers or accidental archivists, based on what you've seen. Silent, yes, but never unaware. The scroll room has its own ecosystem. It's cool and dry, but filled with odd smells. Cedar, ink, dried plum paste, and something you can't identify. The elder maid in charge claims it's old ambition. At noon, you're told to assist in the binding room, a quieter, darker annex, where new scrolls are wrapped and stored. You thread ribbon through parchment, crease cloth edges, and fold each package with the kind of precision usually reserved for prayers. One fold wrong, and the text could become unreadable. Or worse, misinterpreted. You work next to a girl named Sue, who once sewed the wrong seal on a military report, and caused a panic in the outer court. She was demoted, then quietly restored when someone else took the blame. She doesn't speak much, but you watch her fingers. They move with absolute certainty. You want that, not the confidence. The safety that comes from looking too competent. To punish. Later, as you're organizing the completed bundles, a whisper floats past. Sue, barely audible. When you fold words, they fold you back. You want to ask what she means. But in the palace, some truths are best left half-wrapped. The afternoon shifts into errand running. You carry scrolls from the vault to the translation chamber, passing through long hallways lined with green-tiled dragons and dusty sunlight. You envy the scholars inside, men in long robes debating over brushstrokes, surrounded by knowledge. They don't look up when you enter. You place the scrolls on the table and bow. One of them grunts. That's your entire interaction. As you leave, you hear laughter. Not cruel, just casual. Easy. You almost forget what that sounds like. On your way back, you pass the eunuch records, rumaflumets, locked, always guarded. Rumor has it, it contains names, dates, and the secret histories of every eunuch in court. No one knows how accurate it is. Some say it's fake, a decoy. Others claim it holds the truth behind half the palace's scandals. You don't dare linger at sunset. You return to the scroll vault to tidy up. The light hits the lacquered shelves just right, casting long golden bars across the floor. It feels like a trap laid by the sun, beautiful but brief. You pause for a second, allowing your shadow to stretch across a set of bindings. You whisper your own name under your breath, not for any purpose, just to hear it bounce off the walls, like a secret kept safe in old paper. That night your hands ache from folding, and your legs from standing, but your mind hums. The words you glimpse today cling to you. The letter about tax riots. The poem about the lake that swallowed a town. The prayer written in a child's handwriting, asking the ancestors to forgive a mother's illness. You know you're not supposed to remember these things, but you do. And that, more than anything else, is how power works in the palace. Not through crowns or titles, but through quiet girls, with good memories, and no one to tell them to. There's a strange quiet to the palace this morning. Not peaceful never, that but cautious, like the whole compound is holding its breath. You know what that means, a royal birthday. Not the emperor's, but close enough to cause a tremor. In the staff ranks, one of the high-ranking consorts, Lady Zhu, to be exact, is turning 42, which in palace years is a miracle. Or a threat. Depends on who you ask. And guess who's been chosen to help prepare for the celebration? You, of course you. Today, you're part of the decor team, which sounds festive, but don't be fooled. Your tools are a fraying broom, a bottle of precious oil to polish brass fittings, and a small knife for trimming wax off the ceremonial lotus lanterns. If you're lucky, someone gives you a rice cake at the end. If you're unlucky, someone stabs you in the metaphorical back before lunch. Decorating a consort's birthday means following ritual protocols down to the minute. There are specific flower arrangements for endurance, plum blossoms for grace. The vases have to face true north. The ribbons must be tied left over right, never the other way around. You once heard of a maid who tied the ribbons in reverse at a banquet and caused a mild political crisis. She's now tending goats in a border province. At least, that's the version they tell you. You start your day in the Gallery of Blessings, a side hall where gifts are displayed before the honored guest sees them. You're not allowed to look too closely at the gifts, but let's be honest, you peek. There's a coral hairpin, the length of your finger, shaped like a phoenix. A fan embroidered with golden reeds. A lacquered music box that plays a tune you can't name, but can't stop humming. You polish the display table, careful not to jostle a single inch. One eunuch supervising the gallery warns you all. If the reflection of the ceiling beam is off, Lady Zhu will say the heavens are displeased. That's not metaphor. That's an actual belief. In the palace, even reflections have rank. Then comes the flower detail. You're handed an arrangement and told to adjust the petals, gently flatten the curling edges. Mist the leaves, rotate the entire vase 3 degrees counterclockwise. Not 2, not 4. 3, exactly. No one explains why, but you suspect. It's the consort's lucky number. Or maybe she just likes watching maids struggle with comp sets. As you work, you hear a rumor that Lady Zhu's been given a new silk screen, depicting herself surrounded by cranes. The crane, of course, is a symbol of longevity. But some say the screen's artist hid a bat in the background, another symbol, this time for luck. Historians still debate whether these overlapping symbols were coded messages of favor, or just artistic indulgence. You just hope the consort likes it. Otherwise, someone's getting demoted. Again, you're assigned to clean the receiving room, where the lady will be served birthday tea. The room is massive, full of gold-edged tapestries and low lacquered tables. You're told to dust only in straight lines, with even strokes. No circles. Circles are for morning rituals. You didn't know that before. Now you do. The margin for error in this place could fit on a butterfly wing. As you polish, another maid near you gets a nosebleed from the heat. She asks to be excused. The overseer frowns and says, "The body must obey the occasion," which is a fancy way of saying, bleed quieter. Afternoon arrives, and the palace shifts. Food trays start appearing, carried by well-dressed eunuchs. You catch glimpses glutinous rice balls and chrysanthemum broth. Candied lotus root carved into spirals, fish molded into flower shapes. Not for you, of course. You keep sweeping, you keep misting. You keep adjusting that one stubborn petal that refuses to sit right, as if mocking you. Then, a surprise. You're called to assist in the Jade Fan Pavilion, a side chamber where Lady Zhu will receive her closest friends before the banquet. This is the innermost circle. Very few maids are allowed in. You're told it's an honor. You know it's a test. You carry in small trays of tea and candied kumquat slices. You kneel silently. You place the tray. You bow without looking anyone in the eye. One of the consorts giggles at something, but you don't react. Your face is a mask. Your fingers are trembling. You do not drop the tray. As you back out of the room, you hear a phrase that sticks with you. One of the noblewomen says, "A quiet maid is a trustworthy mirror." You think about that, a mirror. You're not a person to them, you're a reflection, a way to see themselves more clearly. Back outside, the festivities are fully underway. Music begins, flutes and lutes, and some instrument that sounds like singing glass. Lanterns are lit along the eaves. Guests begin arriving, their robes rustling like paper wings. You watch from the edge of the courtyard, just close enough to glimpse the grandeur, just far enough to remind yourself you don't belong. Then, it happens. A sudden gust of wind tips one of the lantern poles your section. The lantern sways dangerously. You lunge forward, grab the cord, and steady it just before it hits the ground. A eunuch sees you. He frowns. You brace for punishment, but he nods. Just once. No words. No smile. Just that. You step back into the shadows, heart racing. You saved. Face, maybe not yours, but someone's. And that, in the palace, is sometimes more valuable than gold. By nightfall, your feet ache, your hands smell like wax and camellia oil, and your stomach is tight with hunger. But your section was perfect. Your petals held. Your lantern didn't fall. You lie in bed and close your eyes. The music still echoes in your ears. You see the reflection of the ceiling beam, aligned just so. You hear the phrase again, "A quiet maid is a trustworthy mirror." And you wonder if you ever shattered, would anyone notice? It's raining this morning, not a gentle drizzle, but the kind of rain that soaks through tiles and seeps under doorways, turning every walkway into a slip hazard and every courtyard into a glistening trap. You're awake early, not by choice, but because you're on courier duty, and in the palace, messages do not wait for weather. You tie a rag over your head and wrap your sleeves tightly. Today's assignment: deliver sealed notes between the Hall of Appointed Blessings and the Lotus. Retreat sounds simple. It's not. These messages aren't love letters or grocery lists. They're political whispers, in fancy envelopes. Each one is wrapped in silk paper, stamped with wax, and tagged with color-coded cords. You're warned not to tilt, crumple, or even breathe too hard near them. One smudged seal could mean a diplomatic insult. One bent corner might be seen as disrespect. In this palace, even paper has a reputation. Your first delivery is uneventful except for the fact that the rain has made the stepping stones slick, and you nearly wipe out 3 times before reaching your destination. The maid who receives the scroll doesn't thank you. She barely looks up. You bow, turn, and head back into the downpour. Your second run is trickier. This note has a red tassel, which you quickly learn indicates urgency, or secrecy, or both. You don't ask what's inside. You don't want to know. Knowing is dangerous. Knowing makes you a witness. Halfway to the recipient's hall, a senior eunuch steps in your path. His gaze flicks down to the scroll, then back to your face. This should not be carried by a maid of your rank, he says. You bow lower. My apologies, sir. I was sent by Mistress when that name buys you exactly enough time to scurry past. You have no idea who Mistress Wen is. Later, you hear a rumor that someone intercepted a message this morning and made a copy. Now, the Lotus Retreat is under scrutiny. You keep your head down and pray no one remembers your face. Historians still debate how many palace coups started with intercepted letters, and how many were imagined into existence by nervous messengers. You're not a historian, but you now walk faster with your eyes lowered. At midday the rain lightens, but the corridors stay damp. You're reassigned to the document dry room, a space you didn't know existed until now. It's warm inside, lined with hanging parchment sheets, most drying after being brushed with powdered ginseng. It's believed to preserve the ink and ward off vermin. You help string up pages with a pair of bamboo tongs. You're not allowed to touch them directly. Each document is part of the Imperial archive. One girl accidentally bumped a page into another, causing a corner to smudge. She was reassigned to fungus watch in the scroll cellar. You didn't know scrolls had fungus. Now you do. As you hang papers, you notice one with a strange symbol in the corner, butterfly enclosed in a circle. You glance at it once, then quickly away. You've learned by now that symbols in the palace are rarely decorative. They're more like locks, or traps. By late afternoon, you're told to assist in the ink preparation chamber, which smells like pine tar, camphor, and ambition. Inkstones are being ground with slow, circular motions. You sit on a mat and stir powder into water until the texture is as smooth as the whisper of silk across tile. That's not poetic, it's an actual measurement. There are charts. The ink will be used for ceremonial calligraphy, not casual scribbles, not notes to concubines. These characters are meant to be read by ancestors, or worse, by bureaucrats. You're trusted enough to stir the ink, but not enough to grind the sticks. That job goes to the senior eunuchs, who argue over which batch is too thin, too dark, too mournful. One says a particular mix looks like regret. You consider suggesting that might be appropriate, but you enjoy having teeth, so you stay quiet. Someone asks what the calligraphy will say. Another replies, it's a blessing scroll for the Empress's health. You hear that, and think back to the rumor last week that she hasn't been seen in public for 10 days. Is she ill, or just withdrawn? In the palace, silence has as many meanings as spoken words. You're handed a finished bottle of ink to deliver to the prayer scroll pavilion. It's not far, but your feet are blistered, and your arms ache from the ink pot's weight. Still, you move quickly, because the last girl who spilled ink on the stone floor spent a week scraping moss with a chopstick as penance. You pass through the central courtyard, just as the rain starts again. The sky has gone gray and sour. You see birds huddling under the eaves. A girl slips on a tile and goes down hard. No one helps her up. Not because they don't care, because stopping too long near a fall might get you associated with it. You glance once, then move on. By early evening, you're back in your dormitory. The room smells of damp cloth and exhaustion. Your shoes are soaked through. Your hair is stringy. But you manage to carry 6 scrolls, hang 24 documents, mix 3 batches of ink, and spill absolutely nothing. You lie on your mat and stare at the ceiling. You think about all the words that passed through your hands. Today blessings, reports, secrets, none of them yours. All of them weighty. You wonder, if your life were written on a scroll, how would it read? Would someone see your name and pause? Would the ink be smooth or cracked? And would anyone remember the quiet girl who never let her message fall? There's something wrong with the air today. Not weather today is crisp. The sky, an uncanny blue, clouds trimmed like rice paper edges. But the tension, it's thick, palpable. People are whispering too quietly, walking too quickly, avoiding eye contact like it might burn. You're halfway through folding ceremonial towels in the linen room when a breathless maid rushes in and murmurs, just loud enough for everyone to hear. They're auditing the tea servers. And just like that, the room changes. The silence becomes sharp. Tea may sound trivial, like something quaint, poetic, or dainty. But in the Forbidden City, tea is a language of power. Not just what is brewed, but who pours it, how long the leaves are steeped, what direction the steam curls, and which way the tray is turned. A wrong tea can kill socially, politically, or literally. So when there's a tea audit, you know something deeper is brewing. Someone, somewhere, is under suspicion. You get pulled from linen duty an hour later assigned, with 0 explanation, to assist in the spring pavilion, where all service wares are inspected before being redistributed. You recognize the name. That's where Lady Bai holds her private poetry salons. She hasn't hosted one in weeks. Now, suddenly, everything's being cleaned for her again. You arrive at the pavilion and find a line of nervous maids. An overseer stands with a tray of cups, a stack of order records, and a brush dipped in vinegar. Water. She's testing for poison residues. Not because she expects to find any yet, but because someone reported a slight metallic tang in Lady Bai's last infusion. You're handed a delicate celadon cup. Your task, polish it until it reflects your face. Which isn't that hard except your hands are trembling, and any smudge means suspicion. You work silently, so does everyone else. You think about the last time something like this happened. A maid in the wine service was accused of improperly rinsing a goblet used by a minor noble. The noble fell ill not seriously, just enough to be cranky and powerful. The maid, she disappeared. The rumor was she cried in public once. Historians still argue whether these tea-related purges were truly based on hygiene or just weaponized etiquette. But in this moment, you're not thinking about the history books. You're thinking about how to hold porcelain with damp fingers and not shatter your future. The overseer checks your cup. She squints. You hold your breath. Finally, she nods. You exhale so quietly, it barely registers. Later, you're asked to help reorganize the tea leaves. Archivious, that's real. Drawers upon drawers, sorted by origin, type, and function. Tribute oolong from the south, ginseng paired pu'er, even a storm-picked green harvested during a thunderstorm for extra potency. You run your fingers lightly along the paper, packets, each stamped with red wax, each more valuable than your yearly rations. Your job is to rethread labels with silk twine and check for dampness. You work beside an older maid, May, who's been in the archives for 10 years. She never speaks above a whisper. Some of these leaves, she murmurs, have heard more secrets than the Emperor's own spies. You nod, unsure if she's exaggerating, but it makes sense. Tea is everywhere. Meetings, punishments, seductions. All of it begins with a pot and a pause. By late afternoon, your knees ache from crouching, but your hands are steady. A eunuch arrives with a new packet fragrant. Mist blend, reserved for spiritual rites. May bows as he places it in her hand. Use with dignity, he says. Before vanishing like steam, you're sent to prepare the ceremonial tray. 2 cups, 1 cloth, 3 napkins folded like lotus petals. The tray itself must be dusted with crushed sandalwood. You don't ask why. You just do it. You don't even blink when the room starts to smell like temples and thunder. As you carry the tray toward the Moon Harmony Hall, You pass a trio of junior eunuchs speaking in hushed tones. One says, "It wasn't poison, it was oversteeped. That's worse." The others nod like it's law. You arrive at the hall and kneel at the threshold. You don't enter. You hand the tray to a senior maid, who gives you a look of quiet understanding. One that says, "You did well, and you saw nothing." Back at the pavilion, you're reassigned again. This time, to the herbal infusion shelf. You count jars of dried chrysanthemum, osmanthus, red dates. One jar is labeled golden eye. You don't want to know what it does. Someone sneezes behind you, sharp, loud. You flinch. The overseer glances up. "Cover your mouth," she snaps. "We can't have rumors of plague again." Again, you make it through the shift. You polish 7 trays, handle 19 teacups, rethread 32 labels. Nothing broke. No one cried. No one screamed. That's called a good day. But the tension hasn't lifted. In the dormitory that night, the girls speak in whispers. One says Lady Bai never drank the tea. Another says she drank it and smiled. The scariest option of all. You lie on your mat, the scent of sandalwood still clinging to your sleeves. Your arms feel heavy. Your back is stiff. Your thoughts whirl. You imagine what it would feel like to sip the teas you handled. To taste tribute leaves plucked in the moonlight. To be served instead of serving. Then, a crueler thought. What if they all taste the same? What if the real difference is who gets to pretend they're special? The last thing you see before sleep is your own reflection in a polished teacup, warped, ghost-like, and upside down, like everything else in the palace. You wake to the sound of bells, thin, high-pitched chimes ringing down the east corridor. Not meal bells, not curfew. Ancestral rites, which means you're being pulled from laundry duty and reassigned to one of the most tightly choreographed jobs in the entire Imperial cycle, assisting in the rite of filial devotion. It happens only twice a year, and the preparations are said to stretch back centuries. One misstep, and it's not just embarrassment, it's sacrilege. You're told to report to the Spirit Hall vestibule, a cavernous chamber dimly lit by butter lamps and smoky with incense. Everything in this space is hushed and gliding. Voices drop to murmurs. Footsteps slide instead of step. You're instructed, no pointing, no coughing, and never, ever turn your back to the altar. Even accidentally. Your task is ceremonial linen. Duty. It sounds minor until you realize you're handling the offering cloths, which must be folded into diamond shapes, scented with camphor oil, and placed with their corners perfectly aligned to the cardinal directions. You do this under the watchful eyes of a silent monk and a eunuch who smells like pine sap and judgment. Each cloth covers a tray bearing items for the ancestors: rice, coins, dried plum, a strip of brocade. You don't ask what the items symbolize. You're not supposed to. But you wonder what happens if someone forgets a tray, or swaps the coins with the fruit. Someone once did, apparently. A girl named Chow. The story goes she misplaced a single rice grain, and the senior archivist tripped during the recitation. He didn't fall, just faltered. But that was enough. Chow was sent to the cold storage courtyard. No one knows what happened after that. Historians still argue whether these rituals held actual power, or were elaborate performances of order. In the moment, you don't care. The air smells like cypress and wet stone, and every tiny motion you make feels like the center of the universe. Next, you assist in preparing the ancestral sashes. Long bolts of crimson silk, embroidered with the names of deceased emperors and favored royal relatives. You're not allowed to read them, but your eyes drift anyway. You see the name of the emperor's 4th grandmother, the one who supposedly dreamed the dragon who foretold his birth. You help fold the sashes into gentle curves that mimic river bends. You're told it symbolizes continuity. No creases allowed, no folds too sharp. It takes 20 minutes to do one sash. Meanwhile, a separate team of maids is arranging the incensa process so exacting it's practically mystical. The sticks must burn in synchronized timing. If one burns too fast, it could imply impatience. Too slow, and it means disrespect. You hear a senior eunuch mutter, they think the ancestors can't count smoke, but they can. The ceremony begins just after midday. You kneel behind a screen, hidden but close enough to hear every word. The Emperor is not present only. A representative, one of the first secretaries. He recites passages in a slow, deliberate chant. Your legs go numb. Your neck aches. You don't dare move. At one point, a tray wobbles as it's carried across the dais. You feel every eye twitch. The maid corrects it mid-stride. Crisis averted. Outside, the drums begin. Soft heartbeats, thick. They echo through the palace grounds, signaling to the ancestors, we remember you. We fear you. We still care. As the rites wind down, you're summoned to help collect the offerings. You carry a tray of spent incense ash to the garden, where it will be scattered at the wishing pond. The pond is silent, still rumored to have no bottom. Eunuchs tell stories of a scroll once dropped there that vanished without a ripple. You kneel beside the edge and pour the ash carefully, watching it melt into the water like breath fading from glass. The air is cool. The silence presses in. For a moment, you feel like you've vanished, to dot back in the chamber. The remnants of ceremony are swept away with military precision. Cloths are folded, sashes returned, trays scrubbed. You work with the same care as before, though now the urgency has passed. It's like putting away ghosts. You don't rush. Someone mentions that next week a new girl is arriving, a replacement. No one says for whom. No one needs to. You're reassigned again briefly to the scroll stamping room, where officials write reports, summarizing the rite. You bring them fresh brushes, refill the ink bowls, and listen to them debate the phrasing of the final line. One insists on clouds parted in favor. Another argues for favorable breeze. In the end, they choose both. You can't help but wonder if the ancestors care. As the sun sets, you're sent to burn the leftover candle stubs in a brazier. The wax pops as it melts, the flames flickering like leftover prayers. You stand over the heat and let it warm your fingers. You realize you haven't spoken aloud all day. You head back to your quarters as night falls. The palace feels unusually softness, like a trap, more like a whispering archive. Every shadow feels like a former handmaid passing by. Every corner, a secret kept. You lie on your mat and imagine the offerings, tiny simple things left for people who no longer need them. You wonder what kind of offerings someone might leave for you someday. A folded cloth, a pinch of rice, or silence, always silence. Today, you're not sent to sweep, polish, fold, or even kneel. Today, you're sent to stand. You've been selected arbitrarily, mysteriously, and without explanation, to serve as a living screen during a diplomatic greeting. That's not a metaphor. You will quite literally stand motionless, behind an embroidered silk panel, while foreign envoys are received in the jade promenade hall. It's not glamorous. It's not even particularly interesting. But it is important, which in palace terms means extremely dangerous if done wrong. You're given instructions. Stand straight, hands folded, eyes down. Do not look at the guests. Do not breathe too loudly. And above all, do not faint. Fainting during a diplomatic greeting is apparently akin to declaring war. You're dressed in a simple, pale blue robe, and given slippers that are just slightly too small. Your hair is tightened into a coiled braid, secured so aggressively you feel the edges of your skull pulse. Someone applies a small amount of fragrant powder to your neck, just enough to make you seem part of the decorative motif, because that's what you are now. Furniture with a heartbeat. The hall is massive and cold, despite the sunlit tiles and painted ceilings. You take your place behind the screen, your silhouette barely visible through the thin silk. You're flanked by two other girls you recognize but never speak. One once cried while folding winter robes, and was punished with silent duty for a week. Now, she doesn't even blink. The procession begins with drums, then the sharp clack of officials, staffs. The envoys are from the northern steppes, this time tall, fur-lined, smelling of something like pepper and horsehide. You hear their voices, low and amused. You wonder what they think of the palace girls standing so still. We might be statues. Perhaps they think it's poetic. Perhaps they think it's absurd. Behind the screen, you see nothing but shifting shadows. hear nothing but muffled pleasantries, and feel only the slow burn of your knees beginning to lock. But you do notice one thing. One of the envoys coughed twice, not loud, but it's enough to draw a shift in tone. A eunuch clears his throat pointedly. You feel the tension ripple outward, like a cracked plate. The health of foreign guests is a delicate matter. You've heard stories. A visiting merchant once sneezed near the Empress's peach tree and caused an entire festival to be postponed. Historians still argue whether this level of fragility was real or ritual theater designed to enforce hierarchy. All you know is that everyone pretends not to notice the coughing. You remain perfectly still for what feels like hours. Your shoulders ache, your lower back trembles, your feet go numb. A beetle crawls near your slipper. You do not move. Eventually, the meeting ends. You don't know how. You're given no signal, just the faint sense that the air has exhaled. The envoys exit. The officials trail behind. You're left standing as servants begin to clear away the tea trays and scrolls of calligraphy used as backdrop. You're finally dismissed, not with words, just a gesture. You step out from behind the screen and are met with nothing, no praise, no acknowledgement, just your name checked off a roster. Back in the outer courtyard, a girl from the kitchen mutters, "Another hour, and you'd have joined the ancestors." You almost laugh. Almost instead, you're sent to the Silkworm Conservatory. Because apparently standing still for 3 hours doesn't exempt you from an afternoon shift. The conservatory isn't what you expect. No banners or cloth chests. Rows of mulberry trees and carefully temperature-controlled chambers where silkworms spin their cocoons. The room smells like dried leaves and something faintly sweet, like old papers soaked in sugar water. You're told to help sort the cocoons. Not all are usable. Some are too thin, some too knotted, some harbor tiny beetles. You pick through them, gently, placing the good ones in shallow trays, lined with rice straw. The room is full of quiet humming of insects, of workers, of your own heartbeat finally settling into something softer. A senior weaver passes by and touches a cocoon, murmuring, "This one will end up on a robe for the Empress herself." You stare at the tiny, soft bundle and try to imagine it becoming something regal, shimmering, revered. It's hard to believe the same palace that dressed you like a human decoration for 3 hours now wants you to handle future luxury with sacred fingers. As the sun lowers, the conservatory fills with golden light. You stop sorting for a moment and just watch. Silkworms moving slowly, leaves rustling, a girl humming a song from her village, quietly enough that the overseer doesn't scold her. You wonder what it would feel like to wear something made of this silk, not to serve it, not to fold it, just to wrap it around your shoulders and walk wherever you pleased. The thought is so foreign it feels almost dangerous. Back in the dormitory, the older girls share what they know about today's event. One says the coughing envoy is part of a marriage proposal. Another claims the Empress herself watched the entire ceremony from behind a jade screen. You doubt both are true, but in the palace, truth is whatever survives the echo. You close your eyes and feel the ache in your legs from standing, the prickle of mulberry leaf dust on your skin, the weight of being seen but not acknowledged. And yet, you were there. You stood through the entire ceremony. You sorted the silk, and for a few small seconds, you allowed yourself to imagine something else. A dangerous thing, but not an impossible one. You're summoned just after sunrise. No reason given, just a terse message from a senior maid. Report to the Chamber of Auspices. You've only heard of it in passing one of the upper-tier inner rooms, reserved for rare ceremonial uses. Rumor says it hasn't been opened in over a decade. The air around it smells like sandalwood and secrets. You arrive to find 3 other maids already kneeling. Their heads bowed so low, their hairpins scrape the floor. A eunuch in embroidered maroon robes greets you not warmly. He gestures to a large lacquered chest. Inside funeral regalia, not for someone who's just died, for someone who might soon. You don't ask questions. You don't even think them. You're here to prepare the pre-mourning vestments, a set of garments woven years ago, stored against the eventual passing of a senior member of the Imperial family. No one says whose they are, but the air in the chamber carries that strange hush, like everything inside is already grieving. You are handed white gloves and instructed to inspect the layers for signs of rot, mildew, or moth damage. You spread a sleeve across your lap. It's heavy. Brocade woven with tiny cranes, each no larger than your thumbprint. The lining is padded with gossamer silk. You wonder how it feels against skin. You never find out. You're not allowed to touch your own cheek. The process is long, slow, and silent. Occasionally, someone hums a note under their breath, but it vanishes before you can place the melody. By midday, you're shifting folded sashes into cedar-lined drawers. You're told to sprinkle ground camellia petals between the folds, an old tradition meant to guard against decay and ensure a pleasant passing. You try not to think about the logic of perfuming something meant for death. Historians still argue whether these pre-morning rituals served any true spiritual function, or were simply control mechanisms, reminders that even death, in the palace, happens on a schedule. In the corner you spot a long scroll. A funeral liturgy, perhaps. You glance at it as you pass. Lines of calligraphy describing the rite of silent remembrance. One line catches your eye. A name unspoken is not a name lost, only folded in quietness. You carry that sentence in your chest all day like a second heart. The rest of the afternoon passes in ritual cleaning. You polish jade beads, comb funeral wigs made of horsehair, and adjust the carved wooden frames used to display memorial tablets. One girl spills a cup of resin polish and spends 20 minutes panicking. You help her mop it without speaking. Sometimes kindness must be soundless to survive. As the sun begins to lower, the eunuch announces you're to assist with a practice funeral procession. Yes, practice. You and the others carry an empty palanquin, draped in white silk, through the back gardens. A low drum beats once every 10 steps. You're not allowed to look sideways. You're not allowed to trip. You're not allowed to feel strange about pretending to mourn a death that hasn't happened yet. But of course, you do. Because this is how the palace works. Everything rehearsed. Everything measured. Even grief. You return the palanquin to its holding space, hang up the veils, and are dismissed without fanfare. It starts raining softly as you walk back to your quarters. The drops are warm, a summer shower. You pause under the eaves and close your eyes. For the first time in weeks, you let yourself feel tired. Not exhausted, not sore, just bone deep, weary in the quiet way that comes from holding everything in. Back inside, you find a gift on your mat. A peach, small, perfect, wrapped in a square of silk. There's no note, just the fruit. It's not permitted, it's not traceable, but it's there, and for once, no one takes it from you. You bite into it slowly, eyes closed, letting the sweetness melt over your tongue. The juice runs down your chin. You don't wipe it away. You lie down, full, not from the peach but from the day, from the quiet closeness to the hidden heart of the court. You were trusted, or at least, tolerated. That night, the wind carries the scent of camellia and thunder. You dream of folded garments and names wrapped in silence. You dream of being remembered. You dream of being free. The palace sleeps now. The silks have been folded, the ashes scattered. The candles ease, even those have surrendered to darkness. The quiet hum of insects fills the corners where court intrigue once buzzed. Footsteps, once frantic, now echo with the softness of dreams. You lie in your mat, cocooned in shadows, no longer the courier or the silent screen, no longer the tea polisher, the scroll duster, or the imagined mourner, just you, breathing. Gently, finally still. Somewhere beyond the tiled walls, a night breeze rattles the bamboo. You imagine it's a lullaby sung by someone who once lived as you did, someone who bent low, bowed often, and still found tiny ways to stand tall. The palace will wake again tomorrow. The gongs will ring, the incense will burn, and the rituals will begin anew. But for now, you are untouched by duty. You are whole in this hush. Remember this. Even the most silent voices leave echoes. Even the smallest lives fold into history, thread by thread, until someone finally sees them and whispers you mattered. So breathe, let the weight slide off your shoulders, let the floors creak without alarm. Let the dreams come not of power or escape, but of peace. And if you wake, you will wake stronger. And if you sleep, may you sleep deep. Sweet dreams.